Sa mga nagtatanong kung ano yung shampoo ko, syempre Nivea Men. Okay, sponsor na MPL. But, right now, it's time for us to get back to business. Pag-usapan natin ang nakaraang linggo ng MPL Philippines Season 8. It's time for the recap. Let's go back to week number 3. Let's call in our guests, Renmar and Naisu. You guys ready to look back at week 3?
Yes, sir.
Nag-look back na ako.
O sige, game. Since nag-look back ka na, mauna ka na. Tell us about week 3, day 1.
Oh, man. Week 3, day 1, nag-umpisa between Next Play EVOS and RSG. And dito natin nakita yung struggle ng RSG na i-close out yung mga laro. It took a Lord Steal from James by NXP to completely turn the game around and eventually kung bakit nanalo ng Next Play EVOS sa game number 1. Pero hindi lang naman yun. They handled defense well. From time to time nakaka-counterplay sila. Actually, at the time na nakuha ni James yung Lord, dalawang inhibitor na nabasag doon on Next Play EVOS. But RSG had a good lineup that fought well in the late game. Second game, ganun din. RSG controlled most of the game, man. Yung Uranus dito ni Naths na problema, na malaking problema para sa Next Play EVOS early on. But then with good team fights, eventually merong isang highlight doon na si Rene J nakakuha siya ng kill kay Naths, or I believe it was Exort. One of those two na flame shot. And dahil nanalo doon ang Next Play EVOS, eventually they would go on for the 2-0 win. This one was a surprise. Going into this, Omega looked like the favorite team to win. Pero Bren Esports, pinakita nila yung familiarity nila kay Chaknu, na sobrang kabisado nila kung paano pumuesto si Chaknu, paano siya maglaro, and para sa Bren Esports, yun yung naging main focus nila. Pag pinahirapan natin si Chaknu mag-position, pag pinahirapan natin siya sa early game, mahirapan din ng Omega. Maganda yung set doon ni Chaknu, pero at that point, masyadong mataas na yung gold lead ng Bren Esports. After that team fight, eventually, Bren Esports would win. Ang ganda nung doon. Electo final blow ni Carl TZ, it would be a wipeout. And even though nakabalik na si Kelra, understandably naman na medyo may konting rust pa ang Omega doon na, kakabalik nga lang ni Kelra, pero yun nga, kakabalik nga lang ni Kelra. Kailangan pa niya ng konting oras para makapag-adjust going back into pro scene competition. And then this game, dito, yung naging MVP si Lusty, a little bit of a blooper there by Carl TZ. But Lusty and Ribo, sila yung nag-lead the way para sa Bren Esports para manalo sa laban na to. Ang ganda ng counterplay nila. Lusty with his Guardia, with his wild charges, yun yung game-winning set para sa Bren Esports, and yun yung naging theme para sa laban na yan. It was just Lusty going wild with the wild charge, pun intended, pero at the same time si Ribo, MVP, GOAT timing talaga dun sa heart guard ni Angela. And so for the first day ng MPL Philippines, it was just 2-0 all around. First day ng week 3.
Crazy Lusty. Interesting. Based on how the bottom teams are performing, parang nagkaroon lang ng konting revelation. It feels like pagalingan na mag-reset. Diba? Omega did so well to reset from this sweep from Bren. And then Bren did so well to reset from their first 2 weeks of losses. Pero parang it came to dip. I don't know. We'll see more of that in the next days. Nice, so tell us all about day 2.
Okay. Yeah, for day 2, we started off with RSG and Onic, and I think this was going to be an interesting game, especially considering the fact that Onic was undefeated. They're top of the standings at this point, they were. And RSG, there's been a lot of eyes on them. And specifically the players such as Demon Kite, Aqua, their performances. I mean, even Naths. This is where we got to see some amazing Thams gameplay. And the thumbs up, thumbs down thing kind of got created on the English stream. But again, RSG just... After yesterday's loss to Next Play EVOS, or the day before Next Play EVOS loss, they come here against this type of an opponent for Onic, and they just come out and get a victory over them. I mean, that's got to be a huge confidence booster for them. And this was an easy matchup for them. I mean, they really had to fight for it. It was a great series going the distance, and just an amazing show of gameplay here, especially, again, like I mentioned, Demon Kite. This was the game-winning push right here for RSG to take the win. over Onyx. And again, like I said, I think that was a huge confidence booster for RSG. Going into the next one, we had Next Play Evos versus Echo. Of course, Next Play Evos, eyes on them the whole weekend because they had the win the day before. And then this time around versus Echo, people wanted to see, what's going to happen with Next Play Evos? Are they going to continue to perform? And we actually questioned it too. What is the secret ingredient for them? Why are they performing so well now in week 3? And we'll talk more about that later. But I do just want to say we got to see Next Play Evos kind of play in a very good form. And there was a lot of amazing plays from the big 3 that we've mentioned, and just all around for the entire team of Next Play Evos. And then to round out the weekend, we had Blacklist International versus Bren. Again, you have the defending Season 7 champions versus the world champions, and Bren has been struggling. So there's been a big question mark there. What kind of changes are they going to make? How would they fare against Blacklist, who is literally a force to be reckoned with at the top of the leaderboards? They haven't lost yet, and just the power of the Ube. I think this was just the Ube strategy is working for them. Their play is working for Blacklist International, and so far, no one has an answer for Blacklist International yet. I will say this though, Bren before the season started, people were wondering how would Bren would look, and after week 3, there's a huge question mark for Bren and what they need to change going into the rest of the regular season. I mean, it's already going to be week 4. They definitely have to make some changes to pick themselves up and try to get some wins coming in the weeks ahead of us.
We'll go more into detail about Bren later on. We have a whole topic alone, okay? So pag-uusapan natin yan mamaya. There was an interesting matchup as well besides Onyx and RSG from day 2. Is Echo Next Play? I'm wondering, is it more Next Play on fire or is it because Echo is struggling? Feeling ko may something kay Echo eh. Like, I don't feel like they're 100% right now.
Well, for Echo, we also have to take into consideration that right now sa bootcamp nila, they're having internal problems. I think Raflesia has been very open and vocal yung health nila kung ano nangyayari ngayon sa Echo. But I know like they're not using that as an excuse. Actually, kahit hindi natin nakita si Raflesia on the camera, naglalaro pa rin siya. Maybe of course that still has some effect kasi hindi sila kasama sa isang kwarto. The comms there might be a little bit off. And then at the same time, having that sort of scare might affect you mentally. So right now, all I just wish for Echo is the best, man. And hopefully their health improves. Hopefully their situation improves. Kasi kung tinignan mo yung lineup nila, it's a great lineup. And I really wish them all the best. Hopefully a quick recovery for the entire squad, and especially Raflesia.
Our thoughts and our prayers are with Echo, no? Sana lahat sila maging okay na. Lalo na si Coach Dale. I feel how frustrated he is. Like, kahit siya hindi siya maagalaw dun sa bootcamp right now. So, let's see. Hopefully this week, they come back stronger, alright? Let's talk about week 3, day 3. Renmar, tell us what happened there.
Yeah, actually, makita nyo this coming weekend, I interviewed E2Max and they were, yung Omega, so super proud sila sa performance nila na laban sa TNC. Especially E2Max was very happy with his own performance, and then yung sinabi niya sa akin yung parang kulang sa Omega is that discipline, and then medyo nabalik nila yung mga old habits nila na medyo nakakapektada sa laro nila. But then this time around, nung TNC, sabi nila, guys, kailangan na natin talaga ayusin. Let's fix things up. Discipline tayo. And then boom, they got the 2-0 over TNC. Second series, Blacklist International versus Onyx PH. Man, the series did not disappoint. But then at the same time, it was still also surprising. Game number 1, naging sudden turnaround win para sa Onyx yun. Actually, binabasag na ng Blacklist International nila. Then biglang napitas nila dun si Oheb. Then nag-push out na lang yung Onyx kasi maganda naman yung lanes nila, yung wave states nila. So nag-force sila ng team fight dun sa gitna. Game number 2, that was just kahit na lumabas yung fanny pick, grabe, sobrang na-shutdown ng Blacklist International. Commended dun si Haji. And then for Game 3, commended ulit dito si Haji kasi yung Flicker, Way of the Dragons, Jeet Kundos, mga yun, it really opened up the opportunity for Blacklist International na makuha ng pick-offs. Early on, nakabigay sila ng 2 kills para kay Oheb. And eventually, Blacklist just rode the quick snowball and Onyx, they weren't able to win the series. It was Blacklist who got it. Bren versus RSG, that was a beautiful turnaround play there by Nats, yung Last Insanity. Pero yung nag-setup dun is actually si Iaknu. Nung natamaan niya yung Falling Star mo niya fully charged onto Carl TZ. Then game number 2, Bren versus RSG. Bren were on the way to winning it. They were in control. They were able to quickly farm up for the Uranus. Carl TZ as well. Medyo offensive-minded yung build yan. Nang build siya ng Endless Battle. And eventually, they did win it. Pero lumaban pa rin yung RSG. But this is the team fight where it all went wrong. It was set up by Rebo nung nakakuha siya ng Detona's Welcome dun kay Nats. And then eventually, Bren just rode that for the Game 2 win to force a Game number 3. And then in Game number 3, back and forth siya. Pero yung frontline ng RSG was a problem for Bren Esports later on into the mid-game. Si Nats, Demon Kite, Nats and Iakno, and the fact that they had more healing from the Rafaela. So, super high sustain talaga, high healing. And then, si Carl medyo nahirapan makuha ng stacks. And then, yung turnaround play is, dito, yung last team fight na yon, I just want to share with everyone the beauty of what happened there. Si Heath, man, na-lockdown na siya ni Lusty gamit yung Unstoppable Force. Pero yung sa oras na wala nang crowd control immunity yung jawhead ni Lusty, naka-step back konti si Heath para maiwasan niya yung ejector. Das nakalabas pa rin siya ng isang magandang holy baptism. Na pin down nila si Lusty. Si Nats na sa backline ng Bren noon, nakuha siya ng pass onto 2 members. I think it was Carl and then si Flap, or Carl and Rebo, or Malik and Flap. There we go. So, hindi sila nakaresponde kagad. So, RSG was able to win that. Kung pwede nyo balikan, like in your own, yung ending ng Bren vs RSG, game number 3, yung team fight na yon, tignan nyo si Heath at saka yung buong RSG, sobrang ganda ng ginawa nila doon.
Itong Bren RSG is one of the things that really made it evident for me na parang pagalingan lang mag-reset. Kasi RSG, natalo sila day 1. Nanalo sila day 2. And then nabawi pa nila against Bren day 3. So it really shows that it's a matter of mental game. Somehow mental game ang puhunan dito. And speaking of which, ang nagsimula ng linggo ng RSG ay Next Play EVOS. They beat RSG via sweep. That's gonna be our next topic. Let's talk about the rise of Next Play EVOS. Sila rin malupit mag-reset, honestly. You start the first 2 weeks kind of shaky like that. You get swept by TNC. You lost the Blacklist. And then you find it hard to win the next days as well. Ang galing. So let's talk about it now. Big 3 to top 3. They're number 3 in the leaderboards. Tingnan yung score nila. Sobrang lapit nila ngayon sa Blacklist at saka sa Onyx Philippines. Imagine that. Blacklist, Onyx, tapos Next Play EVOS. I mean, yes, malaki yung jump from 14, 13 to 9. But the fact that you're standing tall like this, from struggling to now so far from getting eliminated, well, what's the secret here? Ano sa tingin nyo? What are your theories on what's making this Next Play EVOS machine tick? Nice.
I talked about this a little bit on the English stream. I think there's a huge impact with when Renegade came back, and I think that was a huge, not just a help for the entire team, but I think it was like a mental switch for all the members when they had like the big 3 there, because the synergy is clearly there. When they play, you can watch it. You can kind of watch it unfold. It's a very different game to watch than from the previous weeks when Renegade came back. And on top of that, not just with Renegade, but I also want to say like James is a huge surprise to me as well. I mean, he's performing so well. He had that amazing play on the Xborg the past weekend, and I think he's just an amazing player. And on top of that, behind the scenes, I think that's a huge ingredient there too with Midnight and Zico.
Perfect. You brought up the Midnight and Zico effect. My next question would have been, eto na nga ba yung influence ng malupit na coaching staff? Because season 6 and season 7, hindi naman si ito na parang or relatively informal ang drafting process or a coaching process ng Next Play. But now under Next Play Evos, they really tightened their leashes now, and they said, you know what? We're gonna follow a strict program. Ito, dalawang coach ninyo. Listen to them. And sometimes even Doggy still comes in. Di ba? Sometimes tumutulong pa rin si Doggy and he still gives his input. Now I'm wondering, malaking effect nga ba talaga yun? Renmar, we've seen Next Play in many different forms. 6, 7, 8 now. Is it really the coaching staff?
That's one of the reasons, yung coaching staff talaga. You can't deny that. I mean, the results show the fact na nakabalik sila after a slow start to the season. They got 2-0 wins for week number 3. Hindi mo talaga matatanggal yung yung impluwensya ng coaching staff. But then at the same time, I think it's just a total team effort kasi the coaching staff, they can do a tremendous job. Midnight and Coach Zico, pwede nalang kayanin gawin para ibigay ng pundasyon yung players nila na okay, ito yung gamitin nyo, ito gawin nyo, kayo na bahala. And then I think this week, yung players ng Next Play Evos, they really took that in. It's like, okay, sige, itabi nyo na, kami muna. And then they showed up in the games. Nice to mention it, James. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the players and the staff, especially their manager, si Madam Baby, they've been very vocal with how important and great it is to have Ren and Jay back because they were happy with the performance of Hesa. Maganda din naman yung pinapakita ni Hesa. But in terms of having that loud voice, yung sa comms nyo, nagsha-shot call, kahit isipin nyo na, uy, baka risky to, but let's make it happen. Something might just happen. And that's what happened with Next Play Evos. They played smart, but they took a lot of very well-calculated risks. They were able to bounce back from what was supposed to look like a 2-0 win para sa RSG. Pinaikot lang nila yung laban late into those games, into those series. So then, boom! Next Play Evos made it work. So it's a mix of the coaching staff. They're doing tremendous. We got to talk with Coach Zico and Coach Midnight behind the scenes nung nag-guest sila para sa MPL Chillax nung final day ng week 3. And then we heard all their plans or what they're doing for the team. And then at the same time, sinabi din nila, hindi din sa amin yun kasi yung players din, they allowed our plans, our ideas, our strategies to show in game, and then mas confident din sila. So you can tell total team effort for Next Play Evos.
Yeah. Now I'm kind of torn. Hindi ko alam kung anong mas matimbang, pwedeng pareho kasi bias ko yan. Bias ko yan si Rene J, the Hitman, and of course si Coach Midnight at si Zico. All right? Kung papogyan lang ng coaching staff na let's not start. All right, let's not start that conversation. Pero I hope that it's not just Midnight Success. The term Midnight Success is thrown out in the chat right now, and I feel like that's cutting it too short. Kasi pag sinabi mo Midnight Success, ibig sabihin biglaan yan and it's not at all. Hindi siya biglaan. Kasi kita mong nag-struggle yung team, kita mong parang Rene J in, Rene J out, kita mong talagang. And not just in game, like they've been experiencing all sorts of stuff, even internally, as a management, as a team, as a family, as an organization. So, I really do hope that this is a consistent rise. Sana pataas lang ang Next Play Evos dito, but who's to say? Maikli. Week 4 pa lang tayo. There's a few more weeks left in the MPL, and anything can happen, honestly. This weekend is proof that anything can happen.
Yeah.
And yes, Tapia, Midnight Baby connection, whatever that means. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the next topic. We're talking about the student and the teacher slump. naghihirap ngayon. Struggling,
Yikes.
clearly. Ang student na TNC at ang Bren na teacher nila. And in very different ways. Alright? First, let's talk about TNC, who I again mentioned earlier. They're swingy AF. They're so swingy. It's either they sweep you or they get swept. Can you guys figure out what's happening? Kasi ako, meron din ako theories, but I want to hear what you guys think. Ranmar, like you saw Work Oster Force Season 7. What do you think's going on?
I remember a discussion we had. I can't remember kung nasa yun or behind the scenes yun, but eventually you helped me realize din na in a way, medyo parang wala yung gigil ng TNC or yung aggressiveness ng TNC compared to nung Work Oster Force sila, because I felt like the Work Oster Force squad nung season 7, they were playing with a chip on their shoulder. Alam nila ay kami yung nag-qualify, ay madaming mata sa amin ngayon, ay maganda yung run namin nung qualifiers, undefeated in series. So Work Oster Force were playing with that sort of, yung isipin mo kung meron kang little brother, tapos marami kayo sa pamilya, yung bunso, siya yung laging gumagawa ng kahit ano para manotice ng iba na, huy, sobrang magaling rin ako eh. And that's what we got from Work Oster Force last season. Now, parang in a way nawala yun. So maybe it's lacking a sense of urgency, aggressiveness. You can see them improving in terms of like, or trying to make improvements in terms of how they play. Maybe they're trying to be a little bit more careful, a bit more cautious. Coach Light as well, they're doing what they can to improve on the flexibility of the drafts of TNC. Maybe it's because nag-shift sila ng identity from what they were in Season 7 to something more improved for Season 8, pero nahirapan lang sila sa improvement. It could be many factors, and right now, we can just assume, but I feel like nakita din yung mga na-mention ko in-game eh.
Yeah. Growing pains or sophomore slump. Parang yun eh. Di ba? Kasi, gets ko yan, it's like school. When you're in school, when you're a freshman, there's culture shock. Yes. But it can go both ways. Pwedeng mag-overperform ka, pwedeng yung grades mo ang taas bigla, or pwedeng, wala, kinain ka ng sistema. They were the former. But now, sophomore slump, when you're in your second year, this literally happened to me when I was in school, like last year. Let's not talk about when I was in school. All right? You somehow kind of get lost. Parang ano ba gagawin ko? May org ako, tapos yung classes ko ang hirap, meron akong crush, di ko makausap. I'm guessing that's what's happening to TNC right now. These 9 talented individuals, plus their coach Lift, right here. Ayan, kompleto pa sila dito. Okay. So, again, pag tinignan mo ang stock ng lineup, ang lakas na ng main 5 nila. And then you'll throw in DJ, you'll throw in Toshi, Dare, and Ben Tings, making their debut in the MPL. They're all very good players. It's just, feeling ko puzzle nga din eh, na parang, where do we go next? After being super rookies, anong susunod? Diba? Like, I don't know. Naisu, what are you seeing? What do you feel with TNC?
All I was gonna say, Toshi had his debut this last weekend, right? And I mean, it was a rough one. If I remember right, it was a rough debut for him. He was one of the players that I mentioned back in episode 0, day 0, where we were talking about players we were looking forward to seeing. He was one of them, and I feel for him. But what I want to say about TNC is I think they're very. Someone mentioned it in the comments too. They're very momentum based. I feel like they have. It's like if they get a lead or they get ahead, let's say they win the game 1, then it shows in their gameplay too. Like the confidence is huge for them. The momentum is huge. More TPs come out, you know, and I just feel like they're a team that relies heavily on gaining those early swings in their favor. As you mentioned, they're swingy AF, you know, and I can see that too, and I don't know what they have to do to adjust that. I think that's why we saw them kind of experiment a little bit this last weekend, and I think they just need to figure out the type of, I don't know if it's player lineup or hero picks or better drafting or what, but they need to figure out something that's going to work for them and not rely too much on momentum and be able to like kind of make adjustments on the fly, because we are going into week 4 and there's not I mean, it's week 4, but in reality, there's not that many weeks left, right, for the regular season. So they definitely have to make some adjustments.
Yeah, to be fair, it is difficult now. There's a lot I have to say about TNC, but that's just how complicated that situation is. Hindi lang kasi natin talaga mabasa eh. Ang daming nangyayari, ang daming possible theories as to why this is what's happening to the returning super rookies now under a very established banner. Kilalang kilala yan, TNT. Now let's talk about their mentors. Let's talk about the teachers in this whole story. Bren Esports, the world champions, season 6. They had a rough week, so to say. They had 3 matches all throughout week 3, and they ended up with a 1-2 score, all right? Na-sweep nila yung besties nila in Omega/Execration. They got swept by Blacklist, and of course, they went 3 games, the distance, against their final opponent just a couple nights ago in RSG, wherein they did their own fair share of experimenting. We'll talk about that later, pero pag-usapan muna natin, anong mental state niyo ng Bren? Anong nangyayari ngayon sa isipan ng isang Coach Ducky? Renmar, you wanna go first?
Watching yung mga post-game press conferences ng Bren Esports, I think the Bren Esports squad, especially now this season, they're doing a lot to really take care of the mental health of the players. And now more so kasi kailangan talaga nila yun kasi it's not been a good start. Imagine coming from the point na World Champions go had a disappointing season 7. Although they were able to have a pretty okay run, but a lot of us expected Bren would make it to the finals. Even Bren wanted to make it to the finals for season 7. And then for season 8, they're not having the best start at all. And what you get from their press conferences is, and I think Flap was the one who said it, na hindi sila masyado naapektado kasi alam lang nila, pag pinag-isipan pa nila na lagi na lang sila natatalo this season, mahirapan pa sila even more so. So, kailangan lang talaga na nila mag-reset and focus. With being able to answer what is the problem with Bren, yun yung isa sa mga pinakamahirap na tanong isagot. Kasi I feel like a little bit, even Bren doesn't even fully know what's happening to them right now. Kasi at one point, sinabi nila, nag-refocus na lang sila na imbis na masyado natin tignan yung ibang teams, let's look inwards. Tignan natin yung anong kailangan natin ayusin para sa sarili natin para ipagana yung strategies natin. It showed against Omega na, wow, that felt like the return of like old Bren with how they were able to dominate Omega. But then with their next matchups with Blacklist or RSG, with Blacklist, they couldn't get a game. For RSG, they were able to get 1 game, but then in game number 3, they were counterplayed well, and that's something that I'm still not used to saying for Bren Esports. So, I feel like para sa problema ng Bren, sa sobrang daming possibilities, and I think it's just that there's just so many things that we can only assume, pero at the end of the day, si Coach Ducky, Bren Esports, sila lang yung pwede makasabi kung ano yung kailangan nila ayusin and what they need to fix.
I agree. You know what? It's gonna come down to finding that perfect formula and not minding the outside first. Parang solve it from the inside, solve it from within. And week 3, parang meron naman developments, diba? Malik in, and I think is a good thing. It's better than week 1 and 2 for sure. Dami katanong sa chat ngayon, is Malik a good thing? Tama ba na yan ang gawin natin in the struggle? Well, they did, right? So they got win. They scored their first win. So I think the answer is yes. Malik is a good thing. How much further can they take this? We don't know. Naisu, how about you, man? Like, what are you seeing with Bren right now? Can they do anything? Anything besides bringing a new player? What else can they improve?
First off, I've always been a fan of Bren, and to see them struggling like this, even it has me questioning what's going on with Bren. And I think it is a big, I think as Renmar mentioned, it's a big mental thing. And the mental state of the players right now for Bren, from the way that we see it, is all over the place. I mean, it's jumbled, right? You have titles on your back, and you come in with huge expectations. You don't perform the way people are expecting you to perform the first opening weeks of the MPL. And that's a heavy toll on the mental state. Now, yes, Malik came in. I know Malik is a strong player, especially individually and everything. But is that enough? I don't think so. Clearly, the other teams that have been making adjustments the past few weeks are just doing it faster than Bren is. I think Bren is trying to, but there's still something there. We don't have the answer for that, but there's still something there that's like blocking Bren from getting it all together, and only they know the answer to that.
Joseph, you mentioned something very interesting. You mentioned the weight of their accomplishments. You mentioned the weight on their back, the possible luggage Bren is carrying that's pressuring them. And that might be it, actually. There might be a possible burnout. We're wondering, where's the fire? Where's the hunger? They are the most recent world champions, M2. We're cruising towards M3. And they are, again, MPL S6 champs. They are also, well, most of this lineup is the inaugural MPL Philippines champion. Rebo's there, of course. The rest of the faces have changed. Coco's there. Pero yun nga baka nga talagang masyado nilang naiisip yun. Parang there might be some unnecessary pressure, or there might be a weight that they're carrying. Yes, Renmar.
Okay, to add din as well to this thought, I feel like, of course, at the time na naging champion yung Bren Esports ng Season 6, or they became the world champions ng Season 7, I feel like what's happening is also still just Bren Esports having a difficult time adjusting to the reality that a lot of the teams have incredibly stepped up. Because nung nanalo sila ng Season 6, tas naging world champions sila, naglagay ng sobrang malaking target sa likod ng Bren Esports. That all the teams were watching Bren Esports, how they were playing the game, how the individual players played. That I feel like now, sobrang taas na ng knowledge ng ibang teams sa Bren that maybe the other teams just have them read. That I feel like they're in this situation because they spawned it in the first place. The fact that they became champions means alam na ng iba, kailangan mag-step up natin. Yung mata ng mundo ng MLBB na sa Pilipinas na. Yung world champions na dito. Bren Esports, sobrang malakas yan. We have to do everything we move, get better, and beat them. And I think that's just what happened. And now, Bren Esports is struggling because of the fact maybe the other teams, the other players, inspired by what Bren Esports did last year, suddenly just thought, okay, we gotta step up, and they are, and that's why Bren's struggling, or maybe one of the reasons.
Yeah. Well, I want to add just a small thing to that.
Yes.
Okay. Just a small thing. Going back to the mental state, one thing that I know with a lot of people, when you reach those certain achievements, like a world championship or whichever, once you reach the kind of the ceiling of an accolade is world championship, right? The pinnacle. When that happens, even if they're not aware of it, there can be some sort of, okay, we got it. Contentment. We can relax a little bit. It really takes a certain type of switch or drive for people to continue to work together. And let's say it's not all of them. Let's just say it's one or two members. That can still have an overall effect on the entire team. The cause or anything, but it is something to keep in mind because they got the championship, right? And what's to keep them going for more is my point. That's it.
Yeah. Totally get it. Parang it's so hard to be aware of something that isn't supposed to be something you should be worried about. Because again, diba, like you claimed it, you got it. And to be fair, they are trying. They are doing all sorts of things. And much respect to Ducky and everyone at Bren. They're taking their time. Hindi nila binibigla, hindi nila minamadali. Because again, they made the right calls. Parang, okay, week 3, Malik in. Sige, laruin natin. Day 1, day 2, Day 3, they tried some new picks, right? They picked up heroes that aren't naturally or aren't as popular in the metagame. Not Fanny crazy. Kyrie, you crazy. But they did pick up a Nana, right? Game 1, Rebo played the Nana in mid. And then game 2, nag-Aldous na si Carteezy. And this actually won them. They won this game. Diba?
Yeah.
Game 3 was a close one. He still played the Aldous. Parang let's ride the momentum here. So, yeah. Looking forward to what new things Bren might be doing. Honestly, there was a mental pick there. There was a Sylvana in mid. I love that. I really like Sylvana in mid.
Me too. Yeah, I love the Sylvana pickup. I like how Bren is trying things out. And I think one of the commenters put it here best na, yeah, it's a weird balance of Bren needs to go back to their comforts, but then at the same time, because they're so scouted, they need to pull new things. This wasn't the first time nakita natin si Nana this season. Actually, Bren sila naglabas ng Nana week 1, day number 3 versus RSG also. So they just brought back the Nana for that. And then game number 2, I liked the flavor of how Bren Esports played an Aldo-centric draft, mainly because of the itemization. Rebo would go for, I believe it was, nag-average siya, tas yung unang item na binild niya is yung Azure Blade, yung nagre-reduce with CD reduction and then can help mana regen as well. Eh madalas yung mga Barats players, yung immediately yung unang item na kinukuha nila, yung Sky Guardian helmet. But going for the Azure Blade means you want to maximize your cooldowns, your abilities, increase the chances that you'll get gold from the Avarice, and play more aggressive. Even si Carteezy, nung game number 2, instead of going for a purely defensive item build, at one point, nag-endless battle siya, and then late into the game, swing up niya yung endless battle for the Malefic Roar, which is also still their own flavor, or their version of how they want to play it. So, you can see that yung experiments na to, hindi lang to experiment na, okay, sige, subukan nga natin to for a regular season matchup. Pinag-isipan talaga to ng Bren Esports. So it worked well. The Sylvana, again, I love the pick. I really thought Bren Esports would be able to get the series or get the quick momentum out of that. If not, they can have a good early game or an okay early game, and then by the late game, maganda na yung stacks ni Carteezy. But unfortunately, that's not what we saw. I hope Bren keep trying this. I hope they keep going for it. Na keep going for those experimental out there picks that at least kita din naman the thought is there, and then eventually ma-execute nila na mas maayos pa. Although Rebo had some fantastic highlights there as well. So yeah, I'm okay with the picks that Bren Esports are trying. I think a lot of people are thinking, nasa experimental picks yan. Pero para sa akin, you do you, Bren. Eventually, it will start working out.
Yeah, I agree. May time pa. Yun lang yun. And again, meron naman silang playoffs mode eh. So feeling ko, cash it in early. We'll talk more about that in just a bit. Real quick shout-outs to our friends in chat. What's up to Keith? What's up to Mark? To Poy, to Armel, to Royce, to Pico, to John Paul, to John Eric, to Craig, to Patricia Ann, to JM, and as well to Cardo Dali. That's not your real name. But yes, maraming salamat sa pagtangkilik parate sa MPL Recall. We are going to be coming back with one of our favorites, Power Rankings, back-to-back with Guest Coin. Huwag kayong aalis, magbabalik ang Recall.